Welcome to Unsilent with your hosts Dave and Brian. This is not another current events podcast. We are digging deeper, diagnosing, and discussing what's really going on today, how we got here, and providing observations for future generations.
Welcome to Unsilent. We're Brian and Dave. We'd love to hear where you think we got it right and where you think we got it wrong. You can do that by visiting unsilentpodcast.com or visit Rumble, great comment section there, or of course all the various social media platforms where America comes together to share the love. Well, Brian, so this last week has been a fun one. We've engaged in what some people would call war, some people would call a military action. I think we probably should call it a special military operation. You know, that seemed to work well as a marketing ploy for Putin, right?
Yeah, that sounds too. I mean, listen, if you're gonna spin it, Dave, like let's put a positive, like a freedom exercise, let's call it. Let's put a good name. We're in the era of putting nice names on not nice things. So let's continue the trend.
Well, so I would go for an Ayatollah squishing exercise. That one does my heart good because I remember how it felt in 1979. I'm that old when the previous Ayatollah and his cronies took over and kept our people for 44 days. So I am not shedding any tears over the death of the current Ayatollah.
Yeah. 1979, the only thing I was fretting over is whether or not I was going to get dessert and get to play with my Matchbox cars or not. So
there you go. I'm a little older than you. So there you go.
So yeah. So all the things we talked about a couple weeks ago are they're not even a thing anymore. This is, and again, people who are listening in current times know this, but Dave and I are talking to future generations, trying to explain what this is like. But all the things that Dave and I were really passionate about a week or two ago, whenever we spoke last, they're not even on the radar anymore. It's just all gone. And that is just how our news cycle is working now. It's so bizarre to live through this. And again, things we were really up in arms about fraud or whatever it was we were talking about. And I was like, what fraud? What?
Yeah. So what is Somali, Minnesota riots? Oh, that's all. Yeah. That's so old school. That's way out.
Right, so talk us through what's so we attacked Iran. Can we agree on that? We attacked them.
Yeah.
Okay. Just give us the narration. What happened? What did we do? Where we at?
Yeah, so basically I'll go with what happened and then speculation on why. How about that?
All right, perfect.
So what happened essentially is 4 or 5 days ago now, not too many days ago, the Israelis and the U.S. simultaneously launched a devastating attack on Iran, taking out all of their air defense capabilities, taking out their leadership council. The Israelis are the ones that took out the Ayatollah and his top 42 or 49. I can't remember what the number was. Top leadership council. And the ostensible reason for that was because we weren't making any headway or any progress in the nuclear negotiations with, in terms of them reconstituting their nuclear program. They said in their the thing that triggered it, we're being told, is that in the last discussion, the last negotiation with the Iranians, they claim to have enough weapons-grade fissile material to make 11 nuclear bombs, and they had no intention of giving it up, and so it was just they reached an impasse, and so Trump said, that's it, we're done, and we took it all out. And so we've run thousands of sorties in there. Now there's other claims. Secretary Rubio says that the big reason that we did that is because their ballistic missile program is running at full steam and has been producing so many that within a couple of years, nobody would be able to really attack them because nobody would be able to stop them from creating a nuke because they got too many ballistic missiles. Now, we do know that their ballistic missile program is very robust. I mean, we're using Iranian designs for our drones. So there you
Yeah.
go. Maybe they had some smart people over there after all. So that's kind of the place we are right now. We sunk their navy. We destroyed their whatever air force they've got. We've knocked out most of their missile capabilities, although they still have significant missile capabilities that they're firing into all sorts of different places. They're firing obviously into Israel. They're firing it into Oman. They've fired it into Saudi Arabia. The thing that is most interesting, well, one of the things that to me is most interesting about this is that the Arab states are all seeming to be on our side, our and Israel's side, which they're the ones, the Arab states, in my mind, are the ones that have the most to gain from all of this. And so they're seem to be fully supportive and saying that we'll help you in whatever way we can. So that's kind of the broad picture, some of the highlights at least.
Yeah. Would it be fair to say that there's division amongst the populace of whether or not this is a good idea?
Oh, in the U.S., of course. Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, there's no question. So there's, especially because if it drags on, it's going to be really a mess. So there was one of the most interesting polls that I've heard recently is the poll that says that something like 60 or 70% of the people are in favor of it as long as it's like done within a couple of weeks. so
Yeah.
so we're fine with blowing up Iran as long as it's done, before before springtime happens.
So when you say it's done, how will we know when it's done? What would tell us it's quote unquote done?
Well, so that's the question. What's the end game? So the end, and that's my question is what's the end game? So the end game could either be that there's regime change. So now that is not something that the administration says that they are trying to make happen, although they are strongly encouraging it. As is, and
I
ultimately,
would I would say decapitating somebody, a regime qualifies as regime change.
well, they're going to run out of people to run for Ayatollah pretty soon. I mean, that's they decapitated the second round of voting.
Yeah, after like
Either
3 hours or something.
Yeah, yeah. So they finally decided in Tehran that Zoom is a good idea. It's taken them a while, but I think they're finally getting the message that they should probably do this from hiding. I think the big question for the U.S. is the something that's unquestionable is that we do not want another forever war. We don't want to have boots on the ground. We don't want to occupy, and that's really the big complaint that most of the people most of the naysayers, if you will, are bringing up. Trump said no more forever wars. Here we are in a forever war. Well, I mean, let's see. It's only been a few days. I don't know that we're in a forever war yet, but we don't want boots on the ground. We don't want people killed. We've had I think 6 people killed so far.
That's the number I heard. Yeah.
Something like that. And now, and every one of those obviously is a tragedy. Now, in U.S. terms, how many people in the military are killed in that same period of time? An interesting statistic is to say how many
Yeah.
people in the U.S. military die in any particular period of time. It's not very far off of that. So yeah, I don't know what the end game is. The end game should be, if we're smart, the Arab countries basically going in and taking over. The Saudis, the Omanis, the Bahrainis. I don't know what you call people from Bahrain. All of those
Yeah.
folks
I
taking.
did see, I didn't have time to dive into the article or the whatever, but I did see a headline a couple hours ago that we are arming the Kurds, and there's Kurds
Yeah,
from Iraq are going to be invading Iran now. And okay, all right. So
could be.
let me back up. So it feels to me like we're doing the same thing we do pretty much every time. We're following the same script, which is we're going to go in and make change. We high five each other on how awesome the victory was, and then the real problem begins, and we don't know what the hell we're doing. Is that so far we're step for step on that, right?
That's the now yes and no. So here's what I would say about that. So in terms of what's actually happened, absolutely, that's where we're at right now. In terms of will that actually happen, I don't really think it'll happen because I don't think that's what Trump is after. I think I
Yeah.
don't think he's changed
Well,
his.
let me the way it feels to me is we've done this same pattern over and over again. We decide we're going to go take a little kid's candy,
Yep,
and we take the candy and we celebrate. We high five that we took the candy. Look what a piece of cake it was. We had the biggest military in the world. They had no chance.
yep,
We took the kids' candy, lickety split, awesome. And then we don't think about, well, that kid has an older brother and a couple cousins, or a dad, or a mom, or whatever consequences that might result from us taking the kids' candy. That
sure.
part we don't think through very far. And we're like, well, we'll know when we get there. We'll figure it out as we go, or we just don't want this. So anything's better than this. Like that part, it feels to me like we're right on point with how we do these things.
Except so here's the difference I think in 2026 in that scenario, and this isn't necessarily just us. So because we haven't really done a whole heck of a lot recently. I mean, we haven't done any nation building since Trump's been in office this most recent time. And it's only been a year, but the closest to analog I think is the Gaza war. So, because in that scenario, I mean, basically the same players too, right? So, in that scenario, the bad guys, if you will, were all decapitated. All the leadership was gone in Hezbollah, in basically all the militant groups, in Hamas, etc. And that whole you don't really hear a whole heck of a lot about what's going on in Gaza anymore, right? I mean, so it's been one of those scenarios where essentially all the bad guys are wiped out, and now the Israelis and whoever else are essentially in control of what's going on there, and we've moved on to other things. So that's a little different than like Iran or like Iraq or Afghanistan or Syria or some of those other things in the past. So it could very well be that very similar thing. Even like going back to our news cycle, we destroy Iran, and now there's maybe there's a civil war in Iran, or maybe you've got 7 or 8 Gulf states that go in and take over, and there's turmoil and all that. But we move on to other things and watch Jimmy Kimmel, and we're done over there.
Well, Lindsey, I didn't save this video, but I heard Lindsey Graham specifically say to one of the, I think it was CBS News, it might have been somebody else, over the weekend, that this notion that you break it, you own it is nonsense. That's not our position anymore.
Well, okay.
It only took us like 6 different, from Korea to Vietnam to Iraq, one to Afghanistan. Like it's only taken us a handful of times to figure out this is actually our philosophy as we do these things.
Yeah. Well, better late than never, I suppose. I mean,
I suppose.
I hope that's the case.
How likely do you? Okay, so let me give a little context. In June of last year, we bombed the Iran nuclear program, and I think the quote was, "We obliterated it." I think that's the quote.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So help me, and for those listening, Dave and I agree on most things. I think Dave and I are going to agree on a few things today. Which again, we're not going to get into a heated debate. That's not our style. But
we will.
So, but I do want to give you also a warning, Dave, that this isn't a gotcha question, but it's kind of like, okay, help me understand what's going on here. How could we both have obliterated their nuclear program, and just like the last, I don't know, 30 years, they have an imminent nuclear program that's going to destroy us all. Like, how could all those things be true at once?
Well, I don't think they can. I mean, so either we didn't completely obliterate the nuclear program, which is what I think probably happened was we did them a serious amount of damage, but they had stuff elsewhere. I think they just had stuff elsewhere. And so, but is it very likely that Trump is going to say, well, we thought we got him, but we didn't get him, so now we got to try again? It's not likely that Trump's going to say that. So I think that's what's happened here. I think that we attacked them. We did our high fives. We had the pictures. It was a great victory. Hail the conquering heroes.
The pilots that came back after a 35-hour flight. It was a great.
All of that. They got decatheterized, and now here we are again. And I think the other thing is we realized that I think what Marco Rubio said is true. I think we realized that, shoot, we didn't get all of their stuff, and they've got thousands and thousands of missiles. They're pretty good at missiles. They've got unlimited missile making capability. Iran's a big country, so they can
Yeah,
make
92 million
missiles.
people.
Yeah, and geographically too. It's large geographically too. So they could just really arm themselves up, and so we either got to do it now because we're probably going to not be able to do it after the midterm elections, or else Trump's legacy is gone. Now, I think a lot of this is Trump's legacy. I think a bunch of the reason that Trump is motivated to do this, in my mind. So we were talking last week about, you want to know why things happen in the world, follow the money, right? Well,
Yep.
with Trump, I don't think that's true so much because he's got more money than ever. What's he going to do with more money? He's got plenty of money. I think with Trump, and I think this is, objectively undeniable. With Trump, it's all about ego and legacy. So I
Yeah,
think
for sure.
100% what he is about is he wants, well, he desperately wants the Nobel Peace Prize. He's not going to get it, but he
Right.
desperately wants the thing. So what's his best path toward that? What's his best path towards legacy? His best path towards legacy is to eliminate Iran, which has been a pain in America's side for 50 years, has been a war with us for 50 years, and
Yep.
to have the whole Middle East unite behind him and say, wow, you've got MBS and you've got the Sultan, you've got all these different, folks that are saying, oh, Trump is great, and even Islamic terrorism is not as big a thing 10 years from now because of Trump. So I,
Yeah.
I think that's what really is motivating him. And I think we screwed up and didn't realize that we can't admit that we didn't blow up their entire nuclear program.
Yeah. I would agree. It's certainly plausible, if not likely, that we didn't obliterate it like we said we did. But we went ahead and took the credit for it. That seems like
Yeah,
a very Trumpian / American thing to do,
an
for
American thing
sure.
to do. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
All right. So the one of the things I'm struggling with here is, as long as I've heard news, I've heard that Iran is an imminent nuclear threat. I mean, I
Oh, yeah.
literally like 20, 30 years,
Oh, sure.
right?
Of course. Yep.
So how plausible would you say it is that this time they like, okay, we did the Chicken Little thing for 30 years. Yeah. Sorry about that. But actually this time it's actually true. How plausible do you think that is? Or is this just like these are our talking points we were given and we've stuck to them for 30 years, and this is what you're supposed to say when they ask about Iran? And just like, the people who are, the Zionist Christians and Zionist folks, like they have
Right.
their talking points that they've not
Sure.
deviated one iota from since 2002 when they developed them or
Yeah.
whatever. Like I get that there's talking points you stick with, and I also get that a thing can be true that wasn't true for the 30 years you said it was.
Yeah.
And I can also get that it might not be true now, and it still
Sure.
might not be true when we did this thing. So where do you land in all that?
Well, I think there is plenty of evidence to say that Iran has enriched material well beyond any non military use. So I think to me that's undeniable. Both from the IEA, the UN, who isn't their inspectors, and I just don't see. I don't think there's any evidence, or I don't think there's any doubt in my mind, at least, that they have plenty of nuclear material, and that they have enriched it well beyond what you could use medical isotopes for, or civilian reactors, or anything like that. Now, were they an imminent threat in their ability to deliver it? I don't know that they could have delivered it. I don't know that they had sufficient rocket technology to deliver it. I don't know. I think the greater threat is suitcase nukes. It's certainly plausible. I mean, the ability to build a suitcase nuke, you can find that online. It's not,
Yeah.
if you have, enriched uranium to, whatever the percentage is, and a few competent scientists, you can build yourself a suitcase nuke. So I don't think
Yeah.
that's unreasonable at all. Now, so again, were they in possession of the ability to nuke Tel Aviv? I don't think so. I don't believe so. Did they have nuclear material? Do they have nuclear material? Sure. I don't think there's any doubt
So
around
so let me stop you there. So they didn't have the ability to nuke Tel Aviv. but it's an imminent threat. Do those things jive for you, or do you feel like we're not
No,
quite being
no,
given the truth?
no. I don't think they're a nuclear imminent threat in my mind. I don't see them as being a nuclear imminent threat. I think
Yeah,
the threat from them has been. I think they've been on. They've been a year away, and I don't know the numbers, but I think they've been a year away from a nuclear weapon for like probably 20 years, and we just keep knocking them down and knocking them down, knocking them down. We
yeah.
just keep them straight from the. We keep them back from the finish line.
Yeah. Also, as this unfolded over the last several days, so I mean, I don't know, we're what 5 days in or something like that, as you and I are recording this, or
Yeah,
I don't know, not very many days, but in that short amount of time, I've heard politicians, bureaucrats, military folks, pundits, whatever, talk about how imminent, and the range is anywhere from 2 weeks to 8 years.
yeah,
Like literally, that's the
yeah,
range I've heard of what
yeah,
imminent means.
yeah, yeah.
And
I
so
don't think so.
I think there's a couple of things I'm really struggling with. One I've already covered, which is we do this thing where we go in and we topple the thing, or like and we high five and we celebrate, but that's not
Yep,
even what the real challenge is. Like, so that's one.
yep,
The second one is we've been told the same thing for 30 years.
yep.
It either hasn't been true or they've covertly stopped it along the whatever. But
Sure,
it seems to me more likely that they've been embellishing the threat for many years.
sure.
Again, not that I'm not a fan of the Ayatollah by any stretch. I wouldn't want to be his neighbor. I wouldn't want to meet the guy.
Right.
I think they're horrible. So I get all that part, but the embellishment of the threat level seems pretty likely to me that they've
Sure.
been making their case. It's a sales job. Politics is a sales job, right? I get
Exactly.
it. Right. I get it. But they don't have any credibility to me now. So why should I believe why should I give me the best case? Why should I believe in this time, Dave?
Well, so what I would say, Brian, is that it's no different now than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I don't know that there's any real difference in terms of credibility than there was during the Gulf War, or
Yeah.
in other words, what I'm saying is I don't think the situation has changed. I don't think it's worse now than it's ever been. I just think that the sales job and the stovepiping of populations into I believe this, I believe this is so extreme now that
Yeah.
the verbiage is over the top.
Here's what's pissing me off. I want to believe him. I really do. I want us to
Sure.
be the good guys. I really do. I don't think we are though. I don't think
Well,
we have a
see, I
hold
don't.
on.
Okay.
Not let me separate those two
Yeah.
things because they're two separate points. I want to be the good guys
Right.
and I want to believe them. They're two
Yeah.
separate points. So I want to believe them, but I don't have any basis upon which I should.
Sure.
Like there's no they've
Yeah.
either lied or embellished all along the way. So okay,
Yeah.
and I want to be the good guys. Now there's different components to that. Taking out a bad guy arguably makes you a good guy. I get that part.
Sure.
Unless what you leave after you take out the bad guy is worse than the original bad guy, a
Absolutely.
la Saddam Hussein.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. No
Or they
doubt.
hand it back to the same people 20 years later, a la the Taliban.
Absolutely. Well, I think see all those things. I completely agree with you. Now here's where I would put some flavor, some color on that. So I think what we have there is this bad. Okay, is this bad, right? And we're saying it's not this bad, it's this bad. It's a whole lot worse than it really is in terms of direct threat to America. Now we have to couch this in terms of America first, right? So how dangerous is this for America? Well, right now it's this bad. We're saying it's this bad because they're going to have a nuke very soon. However, the reality is that the political reality is that it could get significantly worse, either in a few years or in 5 years or in something like that. And it could very well be that, in fact, it's very likely that if it does get worse, we're not going to have the chutzpah to deal with it because we never have. I mean, we just kind of bat them around, just like
Yeah.
Barack Obama's Syrian red line, and just like Barack Obama saying, and he just comes to mind, but just like Ukraine.
Yeah.
So I think all that's true, and then I think you lay on top of it Trump's ego. I think you put all of these things together, and I think we've done a good thing, and our brochures about that good thing look like they're crazy. We just discovered the cure for cancer, and we're going to give everybody $1 million of gold. So I think we've taken a thing that's this good, we've made it this good, but it's actually going to be beneficial for us in the long term. That's kind of how I view it.
I
Maybe
would
that's cynical.
I would love to be able to jump on board with Trump's the first president and the last 7 who had the stones to finally do whatever he wanted to do. I would
Right.
love to be able to get on board with that. But there's a couple problems here. One of
Yeah.
which I covered, and then the second one, which to me is the bigger one. And I'm not sure if you even in our 47 seconds of show prep we did before we started recording today, we didn't get to this. Did you hear? I heard Marco Rubio say this. I heard Tom Cotton say this, and I heard General Petraeus say this.
Mm-hmm.
Three different times they were not in the same room. Rubio walked it back the next day. I'm sure Cotton and Petraeus probably did too somewhere, but I didn't see their walk back. I saw Rubio's walk back. But the statement they made was the reason we had to go now is because Israel was going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And if they went alone, we were going to get retaliated against.
Yeah.
So we decided to strike first.
Right.
Have you heard that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I heard him say, I heard Rubio say that, and I heard Trump respond. Yeah, sure.
What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, it's probably an accurate telling of what was going on. Now, it's a very the problem with it is you can read into that all sorts of different things. You can read into that, and what Trump responded to, he said, no, I was probably going to go first, because Trump doesn't want
Trump said he was going to be the hero. What?
Yeah, he
was going to be the Alex the Great carrying
he doesn't want
the sword in the charge. What?
Yeah, he doesn't want any, but he can't ever be second. He will never allow himself to be second. So I think it could very well be true that was the case. Now, do I think it's true that they would go, that the Israelis would go without our express permission? I don't think so. I don't think there's really any chance that they said, Trump, we're going to go no matter what you say, and therefore you better attack first. I just don't think that's a logical read on the situation. Where if they went first, and would we get hit if they went first? Well, sure.
You have been doing this podcast for 2 years, and one of the things we've learned fervently is that logic does not apply in this current era.
Well, it applies to a certain extent, but well, the logic of I'll say it this way: the logic of the situation. I think the logic of the situation.
Right, so, can we agree that it would be a bonehead thing to do, and it still could have been said or planned?
Oh, sure. Of course.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and that is always the case. See, in all of these situations,
that's universal. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's universal. I mean, all of they talk about the fog of war. The fog of pre-war is also there too, because you're in this situation where you've got just coordinating two powers, just coordinating the Israelis and the Americans is one thing, but then there's no question that somehow the Saudis were looped in. I mean, they didn't do anything; they didn't have jets or anything, but there's no question that all the neighbors were looped in at some level on all this stuff.
I even heard a report that it was not substantiated. I don't remember the source. It wasn't somebody I thought immediately, oh, that's a credible source. It wasn't not a credible source. It just wasn't somebody I was familiar with, right?
Right.
They reported that actually Saudi Arabia and Israel quietly asked us to do this. Now, again, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if it's a credible story or not.
Well, that would make sense.
It would make more sense than the other one. Although, again, in this era, that whole, well, they wouldn't do that. Has always been our kind of thought.
Right,
That's protected.
Right.
And again, we've been burned on that many times, right?
Yeah.
If in fact, I'll agree with you completely that there would be a dumb thing to do, and also we can agree that people, even with tremendous amounts of power, do dumb things sometimes.
Absolutely, 100%. Right? Yes, I agree.
If it were true, as Rubio, Cotton, and David Petraeus said, that the reason we acted now instead of waiting 6 months or 3 years or whatever until they got further along or let negotiations play out or whatever, is that Israel was going to go first and we didn't want to be retaliated against. Is there any part of that bothers you? That really rubs me the wrong way. Well, it feels like the tail wagging the dog to me.
So the way you just framed it, yes, that would really bother me. The what I interpreted Rubio to say is not that, though. What I interpreted him to say is we're all going to go in, or we're thinking about taking these guys out, sometime within the next, few days, week, month, whatever, and the Israelis say, "Well, we want to do it now. We're gonna go now because we think we're under
Gotcha.
threat."
Okay. Okay.
So I see a very compacted time frame. At least that's the way I interpreted it.
And again, I'm not, again, you and I are not going to agree on a couple of these things, but this is not an attack. But can
Yeah.
you help me understand why you're giving them that benefit of the doubt? The plan was we were going to do this. They wanted to go faster. We were like, no, let's wait. They said we're going to go whether you want to or not, but we'd all agreed to go. They just said they were going to go now. Why are you giving Israel the benefit of the doubt on that scenario versus we didn't agree to go and they said we're going with or without you?
Well, because I think it plays into our desire to, well, part of our desire to be not the first actors. In other words, in the Middle East, we want to have somebody else. Well, I mean, except for Trump, because he's got to be first. We want to have somebody else in most cases in the Middle East be the actor because we don't want to be seen as the imperialist, right? So therefore, if we say, like, for which we've done before, the Israelis are going to do this or the Israelis are going to do that, it's their neighborhood. We can say, well, they had to do it because it's their neighborhood, it's not our neighborhood, and because if we go first, well, you're just repeating Iraq, you're repeating, Operation Desert Storm and Desert Shield. You're just doing all these things again. So it's in our best interest, especially in somebody like Marco Rubio, is a smart guy. In his mind,
Yeah.
I would think it's in our best interest to not be seen as the primary actor, but as the supporting actor.
I get that, but why are you giving the benefit of the doubt that instead of us all deciding we're going to do this together, and Israel said we're going to go now, and we said
Right?
we'd rather not, and they said, well, we're going to go with or without you now, but we've all agreed to do this thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of the you're giving them that benefit of the doubt versus we didn't agree we're all going to do this, and Israel just says, hey, we're doing it, and we're like, wait, what? What are you talking about? We didn't agree to this, and they're like, well, we're going anyway. Like we're doing it whether you like it or not. How how are you giving them that benefit of the doubt that we
Well,
agreed upon doing this beforehand?
see, I don't think it's giving him the benefit of the doubt. I think it's that we are the ones with the money and the power. And, I think there's been plenty of things over the past, even several years where like Netanyahu has had to eat crow because of Trump, right? So there's
Yeah.
been there's been a number of situations where the Israelis have had to be their desires have had to be secondary to the U.S. desires. And so as a result of that, I think that the Israelis aren't going to just say, well, because I think implicit in what you're saying is the Israelis are saying, well, we're going whether you like it or not, you know.
Right. Agree.
And
Yes, that is
I,
what I'm saying as a possibility. Yes.
yeah, and I don't see that given the number of times that the Israelis have had to mitigate some of the things that they've wanted to do, that just
Yeah.
objectively from the outside you can look and see. I mean, times that Netanyahu has had to essentially eat crow
Yeah.
because of the
Gotcha.
U.S. So I just don't
And
see the dynamic.
I can see how that same phrase from all three of those people could mean either one. I
Yeah,
absolutely can see that.
yeah,
I just am not ready to just gently go along and believe
sure,
that this played out kind of how we thought. It was just a timing issue. I'm
yeah,
not quite there, and there's a couple reasons to that. In fact, like I think how we ended the podcast last week was we were talking about like the possibility of going to Iran,
yeah,
and you had a theory, and I said, well, I have an alternate theory, and that is that Israel wants us to.
sure, yeah,
That
yeah,
was, and I went through like the list of 7 countries that
sure,
they mentioned back in whatever year it was, that these are the 7 countries we have to whatever.
right,
And then you look at like the amount of money that APAC, for example, you can't you it's incredibly difficult to get elected to our Congress without APAC money. It's just the
sure,
way it is.
sure,
Okay, well, when you're beholden to a player like that, and of the 435 or 535 people in
right,
Congress, whatever the number is, that are in office, if let's say conservatively 80% of them got APEC money, that's a stronghold. That's not democracy anymore. That's being remotely steered. And then I heard a guy, what is his name? Let me find it real quick here. I never even heard of this guy before. He's a Israeli official of some sort, Naftali Bennett.
Oh
You know
yeah,
that
he
fellow?
yeah yeah he used to be the he was yeah, I know who he is. Yeah,
Okay. Here he is a few days ago. I don't know if this is before or after the
right.
Iran strike happened. I have no idea. It just says a few days ago. He's already making he literally says Turkey is something we got to keep our eye on. In fact, Turkey is the new Iran. He's already making the case for Turkey now, and we
Sure.
like either had not even bombed Iran
Yeah.
yet, or we had just bombed Iran, and he's already like on to the next one. Like,
Sure.
I don't know. The constellation is just aligning too much for me to just forget all that stuff and be like, yeah, of course we were all going to do this together. It was just a timing issue. I'm really struggling with that. Again, I want it to be
Yeah.
true. I really do.
Yeah.
I'm not there.
Well, and you see, I think I don't think there's the outsized benefit of the fall of Iran is not Israel. The outsized benefit for the fall of Iran are the Arab states. So they're the ones that probably I'd say 70-80% of the benefit accrues to, because they all know the MBS, the head of Saudi Arabia,
Yeah.
he knows that, an oil-based kingdom is not the future. They've got their Kingdom 2030, they've got all this stuff going on. So they know.
And he seems like a sharp guy, by the way.
He's a very sharp guy. Yeah.
And the guy who wants to like bring him into the modern era.
Well, see, that's
not
it.
saying that properly, but
that's it. He does the Oman. There's a bunch of states around there that are current petro states that want to move into the modern era and that want to reform their whole way of life and their economies around 21st century kinds of ideals. A lot of the reason they can't do that is because of this Shia Sunni Iran conflict. If Iran is out of the way, if Iran's not there anymore, then the big players in the Muslim world are now pretty much all aligned on having a sort of a westernized Muslim society that will allow them to become more like Israel. I mean, so Israel's already there.
Yeah.
I mean, so the thing is, like, Israel's already there. The only thing Israel's fighting for is that, of course, they want to survive, right? But and that's not a small thing, but it's a thing. But the rest of these countries that are around them, which represent hundreds of millions of people, they're the ones that, to my mind, have the greatest financial, societal, and even sort of ethno-religious benefit if Persia becomes just Persia again. If Iran just becomes Persia again.
Yeah. So I'm going to throw one more thing at you, and I'll get off my kick here. And this one is the least factual of all these things, right? So let's go back in time when Israel was founded.
Yeah,
part of the reason Israel was founded was because Jews had to flee places like Russia and Ukraine, and they were different country names back then, but they had to flee these areas because Christians, mostly, but others too, literally would come in and just like decimate their villages. Like, you just like wipe them off, like enslave them, rape them, like all the horrible things you can think of was happening on a routine basis just because they're Jewish. 100%. There's no questioning that. They relocate essentially to. By the way, I heard somebody say this the other day, and I thought that was a really smart point I hadn't thought of. Relocate him anywhere else except for the holiest place on earth, and half these problems go away. Probably right.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, so they relocate to, and Israel's founded, and they are literally in a they have to fight to survive. Like, that's their mindset. They are fighting for survival, like you just said. That's how the country was founded. And legitimately so. I'm not arguing that at all. Like, they were experiencing horrible things, but that is the mindset that founded the country.
Sure.
And if the mindset of the country when it's founded is we must win at all costs, it feels like it'd be more likely that they would do things that you and I would consider like, that's not cool. You can't be doing that kind of stuff, because that's the mindset that founded the country versus a more passive, or like, let's be agreeable with people and our neighbors and things like that.
Yeah.
Do you think that would factor in at all?
Well, I mean, that was how the country was founded. There's no question. And I've heard people talk about like the I can't remember what they're called. I mean, there were like Jewish terrorist groups back in the 20s and 30s. So there's there's no question that there was a lot.
I mean, they fought back by creating their own mercenary squads.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? Yeah, no doubt.
Which, by the way, they're not the first in history to do that. It's been around as long as people have been around.
It's kind of common. Now, would they? So the question is, are they? So is your question then? Are they still that way, and therefore? I guess my
wouldn't it just continue? I mean, it would diminish over generations. There's no question.
Sure.
But if your starting place was such a must have, again, I'm not disagreeing that you must have this we win at all costs or we don't exist anymore. Like that's
Sure.
your mindset 4 6 generations ago, whatever, 4 or 5 generations ago. That would have to bleed in just how you operate as a country and how you
Sure.
do espionage and how you negotiate or don't negotiate. You
Yeah.
bully
Yeah.
instead of negotiate, and as you accumulate more wealth and you become richer than all your neighbors, now you have the resources
Sure.
and that mindset. It certainly the
Yeah.
door could be open from just a human nature standpoint of they would do things that you and I would look at and be like,
Sure. Oh
that's not
yeah.
how I
No,
would go about that.
no, I think that's true. I think that's true. Yeah, because I mean, they arguably have, they arguably have per capita the most powerful military on the planet per capita. But they're,
Yeah.
that's an important one. They arguably have probably the best espionage and the best, the
Yeah.
Mossad is the most fearsome. And up until, even now, up until recently, that's been a requirement for them to survive.
Yeah.
The wars in the 60s or the 70s, or even the stuff that's happened around them in recent years. Yeah, no, I think that's certainly true.
And by the way, when we say they, I mean, we're meaning the Israeli government, not
Yes.
Jewish people. Like a very
Yeah.
big distinction there, right?
Sure.
And
Yes.
one of the things that got me thinking about this more was I heard a CIA agent, a retired CIA agent, on a show, and he was talking about his first day in this, like his first day after graduation or with their version of boot camp or whatever their
Right.
onboarding process, whatever that is. Like his first official day, they bring him into a room and they, of course, they close the door and like, okay, here's our top here's our top threats from other countries as far as espionage go.
Right.
Any guesses which number one country was?
Oh, sure. The Israelis are going to be right there at the top. Sure.
It was
Yeah.
Israel,
Yeah.
Russia, China, and Cuba. Those were the
Yeah. You
top
bet.
four.
You bet.
At the same time, they're our number one threat for being spied on, Israel.
Sure.
We have a policy: we will not spy on Israel.
Although I don't believe that, but yes. But here's the thing. So all of that could be true, and then the question is, so what? Right? Now, and my answer to that question is, if all of that is true, there could be two reasons that that's true. One of them is an imperialistic reason. One of them is just survival. So,
Yep.
if you're what are they, like 9 million people or something like that? They're the
Yeah,
size
eight or
of,
nine. Yeah.
yeah, they're about the size of Washington and Oregon put together, maybe something
Okay.
like, maybe a little less than that. So if their goal is imperialistic. In other words, to take their their country and expand the borders, or to take their influence and to get stuff for themselves that they are not due. If they have some kind of nefarious purpose for all of that, then that's not good. Now, on the
Yeah.
flip side, if they're and I don't think there's on the flip side, if that's just what a country of 9 million people needed to do to survive in the middle of a hostile place where you're surrounded by hundreds of millions of people that have 3,500 years of hating you, then that's another thing. Now, I think, but and as is often the case, as is I think always the case, it's not this or that. There's going to be combinations of both. There's going to be pieces.
I look at it more like a linear progression. In the beginning, absolutely, it was just straight up defense. We have to do this to survive.
Right.
Okay, 100%. And also fast forwarding however many, in this case, a
Sure.
few decades, but
Right.
in other examples, centuries, right?
Sure.
As a society and a country gets more established, gets more resources, in their case, becomes very wealthy,
Yeah.
very successful.
Yep. Very powerful.
I can't think of any examples of countries or empires before countries were a thing, like the Persian Empire or whatever.
Sure.
Where as they got more affluent, more resources, more successful, they didn't morph into an imperialistic thing. Like it feels to me like that would just be how could it go any other way? It would have to. That's just human nature. You get success, you want more success. We're driven by more. That's how our brains are wired.
Well, but the question is then, why haven't they done that? In other words, in terms of the per capita, I mean, Israel as a country is more successful than their neighbors, to be sure, and they are one
Sure.
of the most successful countries per capita on the planet. But you can compare them to, if you compare them to California as a state, California is far more successful and more powerful than Israel. I mean, they don't have an army but just in
Yeah,
terms
yeah, yeah.
in
I got
terms of
you.
what have they done with all of that, or when are they going to do something with that? You know what I mean?
Well, I would give some exhibits for possible real world scenarios, right?
Okay.
Um, having an undue influence over your biggest financial supporter, i.e., the U.S.
Sure.
Again, we just talked about you can't is extreme. You can, but it's very, very rare to get elected without APAC money. Okay, that I
Okay.
would consider that to be an undue influence over a country who's financially supporting you. That would be a line that I would say that's being crossed. That would be evidence of being more imperialistic, less defensive.
But take
Right?
that to the next step. Then what does that buy them? What does that get them? In other words, okay,
They
let's
get I'll give you my answer would be they get pretty much whatever they want from people in Congress. Like you
okay.
cannot even say negative things about the government of Israel, let alone say no, we don't like their policy and get reelected. Like you're out of a job, you're done.
Well, I mean, Democrats do though. I mean, there's pretty big anti-Israel lobby, right? I mean, there's
Yeah, but that's relatively new, and it's part of the fringe. Like it's also the super progressive people who are just if you're not brown, then you're the problem
well, I
kind of a
don't know.
thing. And
Chuck Schumer hasn't been a real supporter of Israel recently, and he's Jewish.
true, true. Okay, and again, none of these things are going to be universally across the board,
Sure,
right? I could put the Epstein stuff in that category of like, okay, somehow
sure.
they have an involvement. I don't know what it is, but it's plain as day there was involvement somewhere, no question, right? That would be the kind of thing that I would say is going too far. And if you're willing to have young children hurt, or even forget the children part, the women hurt and trafficked, and
Well, I
again,
still don't
now
know. I don't know that. I don't know what the connection is. I mean, I'm certainly willing to believe
these are
there is
just
one.
examples of where they are not being defensive; they're being more imperialistic and
Sure.
doing the win at all cost thing.
But then, but here's the question then. So it's got to end someplace. The imperialism has to end at a point where you've taken something that is not yours. In other words, you've taken land that's not yours. You have taken, companies that are not yours. In other words, all of those things could be true, and an outsized influence. I mean, for a country of 9 million people, they've got a lot more
Yeah,
influence than any other country, so there's no
sure.
question about that. And they've got financial influence, et cetera. I mean, then so all of that's definitely true. The question is ultimately, though, what do they do with it? We haven't gotten to the point where you say, okay, well, is their territory expanding? Is their land expanding? Are the imperialism is typically defined as either you've got more land, or you've got more people, or or you've got more wealth flowing into your land. In some
Right.
way, there's got to be for all of that to ultimately, and this is the thing about with, I'm not saying you're there, but this is the thing like with the Jewish conspiracy theories over the years, it's like they're controlling the world. They're control to what end? To
Yeah,
what end?
I think they've just been really successful in a lot of areas, and I'm sure that
Yeah,
there's people who are up to no good who also got power
sure.
through nefarious means,
Yes,
just like everybody else.
right.
I don't necessarily get that, but I would say that, like, if you're in sixth grade, the best position you could be with is be best friends with the bully, and you can say whatever the hell you want to all the other kids, and
You
the
bet.
bully takes care of it for you.
You bet.
I would argue that's a pretty good thing to get, and
Sure.
I kind of see that's how the relationship is. They can kind of again, there's times we tamped him down, like, okay, slow your
Sure.
roll there, Timmy, just slow down. But by and large, if you pick on Israel, you're picking on us, and everybody knows that. I think there's a real benefit to that.
Well, there's certainly no doubt well, absolutely, totally significant benefit to that. So now the counterfactual to that would be the amount of territory that they had in 1948 or after the 67 war, and the amount of territory that they've given up as a result, or since
Yeah,
that time. In other words, if you take a look at the West Bank, if you take a look at just the physical territory of Israel now versus Israel in after the 67 war or after 72, if you take a look at some of those things, their territory has physically shrunk a lot. Now, the way that I would position it is, if that was truly their goal, in other words, if they were a truly imperialistic power, then they would say that, look, from the Euphrates to the Mediterranean Sea is our biblical inheritance,
right.
and we can show that in the Davidic empires and in Solomon's, we can show that this was our territory. We want it back, but
Yeah.
instead of that, they've shrunk and they've shrunk so that they're a very, very small place now. So to me, to me, that's a strong counterfactual.
Sure. Yeah. Well, all this stuff comes down to what's their intent, and none of us can ever
Yes.
know that,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
that's
Exactly.
the unfortunate one of the unfortunate parts of being a human is we're trying to figure out like what is going on and what does it mean for me all the time, and part of
Right.
that requires knowing people's intent, which you can never know.
Which you can never
This is
know. Exactly.
we're never going to know this stuff until 30, 40, 50 years after the fact.
Right. Exactly.
If they were to say, okay, well, we got Iran taken care of, now we got to get Turkey, would that change your position at all?
Oh, of course. I mean, Turkey's a member of NATO. I mean, and here's the question about Turkey. Now,
By the way, there'll always be a plausible reason. There'll always be an excuse why and it'll
yes.
sound really good at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, and the if the excuse is Turkey attacked us, if Erdogan attacked us, then that would be something. I mean, I do suspect, just not having to do with Israel per se, but I would not be surprised to see Turkey leave NATO sometime in the next 10 years or so. I mean, because Erdogan is, I mean, he's getting old. The talk of his successors are not ones that are necessarily friendly to the West. They would love to be, if Iran is not a dominant Muslim force in the world, they would prefer to be that instead of Saudi Arabia. So, Turkey would prefer to be, a Muslim empire under Erdogan and his successors. So, it all depends on how it evolves, I suppose. But
yeah, I guess I look at just like I don't like that we interfered with the what was it 1948 or 49 Italian election. Like we didn't like
sure.
that, so we took care
Yeah.
of that. We
Right.
didn't like the government in charge of Iran in 1953, so we put in the Shah, and then we didn't like the
Yep.
I don't like us doing that,
Yeah.
and it feels not that much different. We do it through force and coercion and other
Right.
means. But Israel gets to decide who runs for office. That's I don't like it. I just don't like it.
Yeah,
and
and I won't.
their intent. I get that, but I just
See, I'm not there with you in terms of how much influence they have around that. I just think that there's, if they had that much influence, I wouldn't see all the universities allowing all of those anti-Israel protests, because they would have enough power in the university structure to quash that before it ever starts. They would have, their tentacles, if you will, would extend into academia, which they don't seem to have much support in academia, right? I mean,
I know I agree with that. I think that academia was tacked from a whole different angle for sure. It does, again, when you and I started this trying to figure out like what it was like to live through Auschwitz being 2 miles away from your house, like what were people going through? I gotta imagine it was very similar. Who has what intentions, and I think this is just part of the conundrum of life that we don't ever know, and we base our fervent, deeply held beliefs based on our assumption of people's intent, which we can never know. So half the time we're going to be wrong, or more 80% of the time we'll be wrong, because even if you're right, you're not 100% right.
Yep. But that's why these discussions are important. See, that's why discussions like this are important, and why the stovepipe discussions that happen in the media and in culture today are so destructive, because you can't have people batting things about back and forth and have cordial conversations. Because you can never appreciate something that's not part of what you previously believed, unless you talk to somebody who doesn't believe the same thing. So I think it's critical that people have those discussions in difficult times, during difficult times.
Yeah. So what you're saying is the Nazis would not have come to power if people just talked more, and
if people just talked more. Yes.
Why can't we all just get along?
If there were podcasts in the 30s, then we would have avoided the whole thing. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know if we solved any problems or not, but
it was fun.
I got some things off my chest, which is the most important thing, right?
Glad I could help.
All right. Well, as Dave mentioned in the beginning, if there's something you think we got especially right or wrong, we'd love to hear about it. We're trying to explain to future generations what it's like to live through this tumultuous time, as they will undoubtedly look back and wonder what the hell was wrong with those people. And we're doing our best, but we can't do it alone. So if you have a thought you think we didn't point we didn't make, or something you think we're wrong about, you can do that at unsilentpodcast.com, or Rumble has a great comment section. And you can tell future generations what you think about how me and Dave are full of it, or if we're not, or whatever. So, anyhow, until next week, this is Dave and Brian signing off.
See you next week.
Do you want to be unsilent? Make your voice heard on our social media channels and share where you think we got it right or wrong. Go to unsilentpodcast.com for social links so you can join the discussion.